What's going on, guys? This is Limitless, and today I'm going to be giving you guys episode 3 of my Learning Python series. And today is very simple. We are just going to be going over input statements in Python, and I'm going to be basically showing you how to use input and how to receive input, send out input, basically all of that fancy stuff. So in Python, because Python is so easy to read and it's so similar to English, all you have to do to take in input from the user is use input like this. And then whatever you store in these parentheses and in the quotes will basically be whatever you're asking the user to get input with. So for example, if I'm making, let's say, a survey and I want to ask the user what their name is, what I can do is type question, and I could really make this like anything I want. I could name it first name underscore question, like that. I can name that whatever I want. And then to actually get the input, all I type is input, and as you can see, PyCharm automatically does it for me. It gives me input and the parentheses. And so now I could type a single quote or I could type double quote, doesn't matter. And I could just say, what is your name? Question mark. And that's basically all it is. As you can see, I'm storing the input for the question that I want to ask the user, and I'm storing it in here, first name question. Okay, and now if I just do print, which by the way in this series you'll often see me do this. You'll see me put print like this, and I typically do it after I ask an input question, and you'll basically just see me do that because it just prints like an empty line, just for readability, for understanding the code a little better. And so now that I've asked the user the question, what if I want to get the answer that I'm asking from the user? All I have to do is print the first name question, and if I run this, you'll see it says, what is your name? And if I say Jordan, it will basically print my name because I just gave the question that input, and now right here I am printing the input. And that is pretty much all there is to it in terms of input. Alright, so now that you understand the basics of using input, I want to show you guys one other thing. So in my last video, I talked about 3, or actually 4, main data types that you should know in Python. And one of them is string, another is integer, float, and boolean. And for the demonstration I'm about to show you, we're actually only going to use 3 of those, the first 3. And you can actually use string, integer, and float, and I believe you can use boolean too, but I'm not sure. But you can use those data types in your input statement that you're asking to the user. And so if, let's say, this is my survey and I only want people to answer this question, what is your name, with only characters and spaces, right? Then I would use a string because string deals with characters and spaces. But realistically, the user should not be able to type in a number or a decimal for their name. And so the way how I would do this to allow the user to only put in characters would be to put str, which stands for string, put a parentheses, and then another parentheses to close it, basically. And when I run this, and I type in my name, Jordan, now for sure it's going to save this as a string, which is this first name question. It's going to automatically save that as a string. If I type in a number like 2, it's going to actually save this as a string. So realistically in code, in Python code, this too would be written as this. Like that. It's written as a string basically. Even though it's a number, it is written as like a character, as a string. But if let's say I ask a question like, what is 2 plus 2, right? And I only want an integer. I don't want a decimal, and I don't want a string. I don't want characters. So if I type in 4, as you can see, this is an integer. It works, and I don't get any errors. If I rerun it, and let's say I type in some random decimal, as you can see, I get this value error because essentially it's saying this is not an integer, this is a decimal. So because I clarified it up here, it's not going to work. If I remove this and I retype in the decimal, as you can see, it works because I'm not defining first name question as an integer, string, or float. It just works because I'm not declaring it as anything. And as for a float, let's say I only want a float number. I don't want a string or an integer. I just want float. If I put in a decimal, it should work, and it's saved as a float like it should. If I type in letters here, or if I type in a whole number like 2 or 4 or something like that, it gives me the same value error because essentially I'm declaring it as a float and not a string like here because I'm using characters. Same thing applies if I'm doing a whole number. This will actually save as a float. I'm not sure exactly why that is, but it saves as a float, which I might go into a little bit later. As you can see, I put in a whole number as an integer and not a decimal, and it comes out as a float number. So that's another thing that you can do with float. You can accept integer numbers as well. And yeah, that is pretty much it for learning how to use input in Python. There's a ton of different things that you can do with taking in input and throwing it back out to the user. And yeah, that is basically it. If you guys have any questions, leave it down below. And yeah, thanks for watching.